Okay, welcome everyone to this workshop about top hacks since last Devcon. Last Devcon was a long time ago actually, so a lot of hacks have happened since then. We'll talk about what we learn, but first, quick introduction about myself. I'm one of the founders at ChainSecurity. We are one of the old auditors in the space, you can say, responsible for a lot of audits, a lot of things in the Ethereum ecosystem. I will skip most of that, but just so you know who you're having in front of you, I'm more coordinating stuff, seeing a lot of the hacks, of course, working a lot on the responses. We also have our team here who is actually doing the audits. And I'm here together with Mudit. I'll let you introduce yourself, but many of you will know him.
Hey folks, I'm Mudit. I lead security and engineering as well now at Polygon. And yeah, this is going to be an interesting one. The aim is to go over all of the top hacks that have happened since last Devcon. Matthias and ChainSecurity have done all of the hard work. So, I mean, I'm here as a guest speaker, sort of. I'll go over a few things. There are a few nice things I want to talk about, especially about the WazirX hack and all of the other things WazirX is doing, which I'm going to go in more detail in my talk tomorrow, but it's going to be a good teaser today. And yeah, let's continue.
So, the other participant is, of course, you guys, right? This is a workshop. So, the way I think we can best learn from security incidents is by sharing that knowledge of what happened. What did you learn from some of the things you have seen? What are your takeaways from some of the hacks we'll go over, in addition to the ones I compiled on these? So, we'll try something first on this, and that's one of the new Web3 thingies to do documents, right? So, try this. See if you can log in, see if it shows top hacks. It's a document we can all work on together to add insights to. It's kind of empty. It should show a heading. If this is not working, there is a Google Docs backup to do this, right? But I'll give you a second to try.
Yeah, we're going to have a bunch of good learnings there, and I'm going to use them later because the WazirX hack, I would reverse it. I would want you guys to explain me how it happened. I have no idea how it happened. So let's focus on these, and then we can together figure out perhaps how the WazirX and Radiant hacks happened.
So who has the document open and sees something like top hacks? Just quick raise of your hands. 2, 3 managed, 4. Okay, yeah, some more.
I think we have consensus.
Yeah. You know, what is this? 5 out of 100 multisig here? So.
Good enough.
Okay. Now, this is an Ethereum conference, of course, and Ethereum has seen a lot of hacks because a lot of building happens actually on Ethereum, right? But the biggest hack is not on Ethereum. The biggest hack we have seen since last Devcon was a compromise of DMM Bitcoin's wallets. This, I need to go into it a little bit because the Bitcoin wallet is a little bit different, right? It did use a 2 out of 3 multisig, and this is natively supported on Bitcoin, right? It is not known a lot about how the attackers managed to gain access. So, at least not to me. Perhaps some of you have more insights in here. All I know is at some point, this exchange, in something resembling a cold wallet, was splitting up like a lot of transactions into 500 Bitcoin batches, you can say, right? But they're all controlled by a single private key, or a multi-sig, so 2 out of 3 private keys. And they were sitting there for quite some time, right? And it was being used for some unspents, and yeah, it was kind of active whenever they had to fall back to it. But then at one point, an attacker drained it, but really not completely. They just used, I think, 9 unspents, the 9 largest ones, and they had a few months to collect those signatures in this case. So yeah, this is roughly what happened, right? The exchange was able to secure the remaining amount roughly 1 hour later. To me, it looks like a signature attack once again, not a compromise of private keys, because with a compromise of private keys, we would have seen everything drained, right? Somehow they managed to, perhaps with an insider, perhaps to phishing or whatever, it's very hard to say, that those signatures were created and then were in the end used. So this was by far the largest hack we have seen.
Yeah, and it's very similar to actually how WazirX got drained and also Radiant in the methodology, which we don't have 100% clarity on. We have theories on how such an attack could have happened, and we definitely have protections on how to prevent these, regardless of what the method was, which we'll discuss. But it's one of those brain teasers. You guys can, while we go over other hacks, try to decipher how something like this could have happened.
So my initial take on what can we do to make such an attack harder, right? Is, like, you did see a very large wallet holding significant funds. And from a human perspective, you know, like, at the end, someone had to sign, right? But a signature here exposed a lot of funds. So one way to reduce the risk is splitting funds. But that comes with its whole own set of risks, right? And we'll have a later hack which shows this whole set of risks there. The other thing is, what was special about this hack, which you are familiar with here, right, but which I haven't seen in other blockchains too much, is they choose the destination address carefully. It was an address which had the same 5 initial characters in the Bitcoin address and the last 2. This points that someone did compare the first 5 and the last 2, or those were shown to them as a valid address, right? And I think we'll go over this also. Even if it is kind of possible to compare a hash because you have a trusted source and you can compare the whole hash, laziness prevents us from doing that often, because we just start with the first and the last, and yeah, that's fine, right? We kind of know this is secure now. It's the right address. But now, to you guys. So, who has something to add to this first hack, the only one which is not on the Ethereum ecosystem? Yes, can we have the volunteers pass the microphones? Also, feel free to use the document and add stuff there, right? This is just collaborative. Competitive too?
It's just us farming our work out, so we don't have to do it. Yes, I have not.
So, what if, to avoid this laziness, we would double hash things? Like, it is hard to brute force that you start and end with the same hex nibbles, and then that the hash of that itself matches the first and last hex nibbles. Would that help anyway, or would it overcomplicate things?
I can answer this one. It doesn't matter. Like, it's same complexity to create that collision between a hash and a hash of hash and a hash of hash of hash. It's still brute force. So it's same complexity, actually.
I can also repeat. Just shout and I repeat. That's perhaps faster.
Why is the wallet even let someone say to that? Because there's almost no way that you organically hit those numbers. Like, there's almost no way that you hit another account that has the same first four and last four. It's like 1 in 82 trillion, whatever. So why doesn't it just get blocked at that stage?
Good point. So the point here is like, why didn't they have some software in place which automatically detects that there was something which looks similar and just blocks everything which looks similar, right? Well, hindsight,
Yeah, and
this is a good idea.
But it's not something that's new.
It's not new, but that's the thing. Like, we are maybe 10 years behind from traditional security when it comes to security measures here. I mean, the epitome of security here is seeing a random hash on ledger before signing it. So we are far from where we should be. But yes, 100%. Like, in an ideal world, a wallet should protect you with these scenarios and should warn you, hey, this address is slightly different from where you send. Are you sure you want to send funds here? Banks do it with even names and things like that. Even with email phishing and so on. Like, if someone sends you an email with same name as someone you know, it shows you a warning. Like, it's not that same person and so on. So yes, these protections exist and our wallets should have it, but our wallets are very bare bones. The best we have gotten so far is this tiny window on a browser, which you have to scroll down to see details before you sign. So lots of work to be done there, and it will happen. We have made great strides, but we gotta remain secure while that work finishes.
Okay,
Question there?
one more, and then I go to the next hack.
Centralized exchanges remain the biggest threat. What about holding user funds for centralized exchanges? They're still centralized in terms of their market-making process, but by default, automatically.
Yeah, so the question here is why is this the standard that you have centralized exchanges which do hold user funds instead that is the standard that you don't and people hold their own funds?
So I can answer this one as well. Like, because I'm a very practical person. Like, in reality, yes, I want every one of you to do self-custody and keep your keys secure. But the reality is there was one bigger hack than this one, which was just user phishing. Like, at least around $2 billion were lost since last Devcon to just users that are self-custodying being compromised and phished and so on. So, like, and these right now our audience is very technical. Like, anyone who's self-custodying is a relatively much more technical person than your average Joe. So if we want this technology to have mass adoption, we either need to make it much simpler to self-custody, or we need to make custodial services much safer. So in any case, there's lots of work needs to happen. There are trade-offs, but none is like objectively better than the other choice. Like, imagine telling your grandmom how to use MetaMask. Like, it's just not gonna happen. I would prefer she uses Coinbase. So.
Okay, let's go over to the next thing. And if you have more to add, right, don't hesitate to put it in this document. So, the next one was already teased. I'll let you cover it.
Yeah, exactly. It's I guess the second biggest one. This was, I think, around $230 million or so. And the way this was happened was very similar to the last one. It all started by, so WazirX had a system of a cold wallet and a hot wallet. So the hot wallet was used to honor all of the user withdrawals of funds and so on. And the cold wallet topped up the hot wallet whenever it needed more funds, there were more withdrawals. So the hackers, first thing they did was trigger this movement or force WazirX to move funds from cold wallet to hot wallet by continuously in a loop depositing Gala token and withdrawing Gala token. So when you deposit to an exchange, you get a unique address and you deposit there. It doesn't go to the hot wallet directly. So what this meant was the hot wallet ran out of funds. WazirX still had all of the tokens, but in different wallets. It didn't have tokens to honor withdrawals from the hot wallet. So they decided to move funds from their cold wallet to hot wallet, which is a routine activity for them. They do it every week, nothing suspicious. Although it should have been suspicious, like why there are so many Gala deposits and withdrawals suddenly happening. But beyond that point, they started doing this deposit of Gala from cold wallet to hot wallet. Initially, the transactions kept failing for them, so they were using Liminal as their self-custody provider, which as a product suite in itself is hilarious. Like, it's basically a wrapper of unsafeness on Gnosis Safe, but they were using it. So they got them involved, they started debugging and everything, but then it just started working. After like 5 failed attempts, it was working. So that's fine. What they didn't realize is those 5 failed attempts could have been just them signing malicious transactions and obviously UI rejecting them. So they happily press the button on ledger, press the button on ledger, press the button on ledger, all malicious transactions signed, all good. But yeah, at the end, I won't go into details of how the signatures were collected, but yes, they had failed transactions which they signed and just ignored because one, like the UX in our space is so broken that failures are normal. Like 5 times fail, 6 times success, perfect. It's nothing to worry about. But that's, yeah, we will come to it how that's bad. But yeah, they just signed these bad transactions without realizing they're signing bad transactions. The UI was showing them the good details, the correct transaction, but they were signing something bad. How that happened, the UI is showing them something good and them signing something bad is an unknown with lots of theories. I have my own theory. But
what's your theory?
My theory is that it's something I would share later. I don't want to poison others' thoughts because I want people to post their theories on that thread or channel or whatever. So there are lots of possibilities. I'll give you some possibilities. One possibility is that Liminal was compromised, their service provider. So the UI was showing something else but sending bad data for signing. It is a plausible theory. Another theory is the wallet they were signing was compromised, so they, instead of installing MetaMask, they installed MetaFox, I don't know, and the wallet was changing the transaction. Another theory is those laptops they were using to sign were compromised themselves, could have been like they were at some point like in the same infrastructure or something, so someone spread a virus on it or whatever, and the laptops themselves changed the transactions up after the transaction. So once you compromise the laptop, you can modify the wallet, you can modify the interface between ledger and so on, so you can do anything. So one theory is that the laptops were compromised, but those were 3 different laptops, MacBooks in 3 different regions. So yes, another theory is the ledgers themselves were compromised, and since it's a single company, single hardware device, maybe they used the same vendor to buy these ledgers and they got compromised fake ledgers somehow. Another theory is the wires they bought were compromised, so this right signal left the computer, wrong signal left reached the device, and it just happened over longer periods, so people didn't realize. So there are a bunch of theories. You can theorize more, but try to theorize what is most plausible here. But we'll ignore that, come to like how do you make yourself safer. So it doesn't matter what that the theory is there. There are some basic things you can do to keep yourself safe.
I have these. This is the basic stuff, right? This is a teaser for your talk?
Yes, it's the teaser. So I'll go through these very briefly. Number 1 is use hardware wallets. Like, don't trust software wallets or browser wallets. They are much, much, much easier to attack than a hardware wallet. The second one, I have to repeat this so many times, but it's obvious. Like, don't share your mnemonic key. Not to MetaMask support, not to Coinbase support, not to your grandma. Nobody. Just never share it. Never type it out on a computer. Never copy and paste it anywhere. Just write it down. You can write it down on different pieces of paper, split it down, whatever, and just keep it safe. Then on
just
sign,
keep it safe. That's all you need to do.
It's a teaser, so we are going a little fast. It's a very loaded word, and I can do a whole 1-hour session on how to keep mnemonic safe, but I'm assuming most of the people who are here have heard that a lot already. But yeah, fair point. Then another thing is like security is always about layers. Even when you have a hardware wallet, if you're connecting to a dApp, I would recommend you to connect it through Rabi or MetaMask or some wallet, your ledger, instead of connecting ledger directly through the ledger kit to the dApp. Because whatever wallet you connect to, Rabi is good for this. It would decode the transaction for you and show you what actually you're signing. So even if the website is compromised, you can catch it at the browser level. If you directly connect your ledger to the website, if the website is malicious, what you're seeing on ledger is just gibberish. You're not gonna know what you're signing, and you're gonna get wrecked. So just keep adding layers, verify what you're signing on the browser wallet. You can potentially use dedicated air-gapped devices. These don't need to be super expensive. Can be like $300, $400 Chromebooks, which you don't do anything on except signing transactions on Gnosis Safe. So you can add a firewall to it, which only allows connection to the Gnosis website and nothing else. So you only open it, sign it, you close it. There is no other thing going in and out of that. Don't do your regular work on it. Another basic one is ensure secure threshold for your multisig. Like the biggest hacks we have had were like 3x11 multisig, 5x9 multisig, 2x3 multisig. These are, and this one was I think
3x11, yeah.
Yeah, 3x11 Radiant, and then they say they were following the best industry practices, and they don't know how they got hacked. So it's like, if you are following the best practices, do actually follow the best practices. 3x11 is not the best practice, I would argue. Verify hashes on your hardware wallets. This is a big one. Now, Ledger is working on making those more legible, which is super nice. But in the meantime, we have some community tools you can use. Like PC has made the super nice safe TX hashes util, which you can use to basically, it will fetch all of the data from Gnosis API, hash it, so you actually get a hash which you can verify on Ledger. Like you then just compare two things. Now you can be lazy and ignore that, but at least you have something to compare. Before this, if you were just using the Ledger on Gnosis site, Gnosis will show you all of the dehash things, the actual data of what you are signing, and Ledger will show you just an hash. So you can never verify like what you are signing is actually what you are seeing. Using these tools, and I think Gnosis are adding this officially now, you can actually verify that you are signing what you are seeing. Finally, use a diverse set for your signers. Don't make everyone use a MacBook with Ledger, with Chrome browser and everything. Use a diverse set. And especially throw in mobile devices there, because they have completely different risk profile. Like hacking Windows device is much different than hacking an Android device. So just use a different set of things, and do not ignore failures. I know Web3 UX sucks and failure happens, but figure out why that failure happened, especially when there are critical funds at risk. Do not just ignore a failure and move on.
So my proposal on this is we should aim for this 3-star security thing. We have some experience with that when really large funds are being handled by centralized entities. And it really makes sense to try to force an attacker to break 3 systems before they get you, right? Now we had cases where you can say, like, if they got into the UI of Safe, they got you. If they got into the liminal UI, they got you, right? If they get HTTPS certificates for those websites, you will access them, they get you, right? Man-in-the-middle attacks where possible. Of course, these are state actors, right? We do face here a different threat vector than we usually face. This is not about you protecting your own ledger or so, right? This is about protecting funds which Lazarus groups thinks are worthwhile to attack. There is a lot of things unknown about Wazir and what happened here. Are there things you want to add from what we said? Ideas we already talked about, the theories. How do you think they have been compromised? And if you'd be the CISO of that project, what would you do? What would your learnings be out of that? What would you try to do differently?
think we'll look at the document later, what ideas people have.
Can we have a microphone there?
Didn't they have some logging system also?
Logging, yes, but you can't really trust logging, and it doesn't help because it's in this scenario because it has already happened. Okay, you logged and realized, oh, I did a mistake. But that mistake already happened. So you need, beyond logging, you also need active monitoring and alerting and actually taking action on those. They had logging, but it didn't matter. Again, like errors happened. They said, oh, errors are normal. It's fine. Let's move on.
Yeah, there were some really after the fact things where you can say like it was in the logs and it was very suspicious, right? The problem is the noise of logs. I've been working in this myself and they are very, very noisy. And it is very hard to write, before you know exactly what the attack is, what to listen for in these noisy logs.
Yeah, I think around about the same time there was a Microsoft threat research article on DPRK using Chrome 0 days, and it could have been a 0 day, and I think you've already covered that, Mudit. Highly likely though, if you look at some of the compromises beforehand, is that it was probably spear phishing via browser extension, side-loaded browser extension that got them man in the browser. I think it was important for Wazir to not have been reading their email on the same machines where they signed transactions. So I think separate Chromebook or separate iOS would have been a much better operation for them. And also, there was probably a time for them to add delay. As soon as they noticed the failures of the 2 Gala transactions, they should have probably realized that they were being targeted, potentially raised a security incident, started to go through this transaction hashes and data hashes. And I think lastly, they had a really high concentration of signers. So if you go and look at every signed transaction for WazirX, there was around about 1,700. It was basically 3 to 4 signers. So the adversary knew exactly who to go after, whereas they should have much more entropy in their signer quorum.
Yeah. In reality, I mean, humans are the weakest link in security, almost always. WazirX had processes in place or policies in place, but in practice, those processes were never followed. For example, the first question I also asked them, like, why was your devices not air-gapped? And they were like, it's our policy to have air-gapped devices. But we installed Telegram and that on to communicate. And like, so they had all of the policies, none of them were followed. And that actually sadly happens in 90% of the orgs I've seen.
Yeah. On this, a difference I've seen in the more traditional industry is really you have paid employees to do this thing and they really care. Versus they are devs, also paid employees, right? But they are kind of doing this because they have to and you do it quickly. So we are all lazy, right? So yeah, I'll go to the next hack. We have one more question.
In my view, they kind of never thought deeply into their actual system. They took a ledger connected to like a 4 out of 6 multi-sig, but they gave liminal only 1 signature. So they could have easily just bypassed liminal if they wanted any protection that may have been there. Could have just ignored, just didn't need to do it.
Yeah, for sure, they could have, but the liminal was sort of like their signal mechanism. Like if a liminal is signing, they would say, okay, it's good. If they're not signing, it's bad. But the thing is, in this scenario, liminal signed. So one of the signatures were liminals, and liminal's firewall or their security solution was like, yes, perfect solution, perfect transaction, let's go ahead. So that's why I was saying like I have no idea why they chose liminal as their custodial, semi-custodial solution when they were using NoSysSafe, because it ended up like weakening their security instead of strengthening. As soon as liminal system saw, okay, 3 people have signed, it signed the transaction. So it became from 4 to 6 multisig to a 3 to 6, 3 of 6 multisig.
I prepared 20 hacks. No. Okay, I'll skip over some anyway. Okay, we take one more, but write your stuff otherwise in the document.
So what's the right threshold for a safe? Like, let's say, for example, if the funds are huge, like a couple of $100 million or like $1 billion, what's the right threshold to use and how many multisigs and how to choose that?
Yeah, for sure. It always should be based on your risk, because again, like if I make the most strict policies in the world, nobody will follow them. Security is always about risk management, and it's something you learn with experience. Like you can create the best policies, but they're useless if nobody follows them.
How is it at Polygon?
At Polygon, we have different levels of multisig. So we have a threshold for under $1 million of exposure. We have a threshold for $1 to $5 million of exposure, of 10 to 20, and above 20. Above 20 is our like, we have to keep this secure kind of scenario. And we almost never use the above 20 multisigs because all of the operations should happen from the multisigs with lower exposure.
But
ultimately,
the 20 plus, how?
Yeah. So ultimately, like the ultimate multisigs we have are like, for example, Security Council, the Protocol Council. They are 9 by 12, I think right now, or 9 by 11. Something along, I think it's 9 by 12. Jordi might know exactly, but it's 9 by 11 or 9 by 12 for our Protocol Council. And that's our, like, if you want the most security, that's where we settled.
This.
Not different phones. The way we enforce it is we don't enforce any common hardware. So naturally, you would have a diversified set of signers, but we do collect like what sort of signing devices people are using. So if I see, okay, like it's very Mac heavy or it's very this heavy, then the next signer I add on or replace would be on a different set. But I've honestly not had to do it so far because just naturally it has been very diversified.
Do you know if they sent the laptop of the developer to a forensic company to try to investigate where the issue could have come from?
WazirX hired Mandiant and Liminal hired, I don't remember, someone to investigate. So they are working with professionals, but it's very hard post the hack, because if the hackers are state level actors like DPRK in this case, they know how to erase their traces. Like this is not Web3. This is Web2 stuff that they've been working on for 20 years. They've, by best guesses, around 25,000 people in the Lazarus org. I don't know what's the right word to call it, but yeah, the threat actor.
Yeah. Just because we can't find it after the fact makes it really not a strong signal that there wasn't one. So yeah, even though I wrote this down here before, right? Where was it? No phishing was involved, no sign was found. This does not mean that it wasn't like this, right? Okay, let's continue. A different case, but still a key compromise. Gala Games, the third biggest hack. This was very likely, I'm going out of the way here because it's not definitive, but I'd say very likely an insider. Gala was able to recover all of these tokens, and somehow an old minter address was able to mint a lot of Gala, dump them, and return them the next day. There were some internal conflicts at the project. Key people left, and then this happened, right? So, coincidence or not, hard to say, right? What did we learn here? From my perspective, we had dormant access to very powerful functionality in a project. So likely, yeah, I mean, this happens all the time, right? You forget to withdraw access to people when they leave. You had here a tricky case of trusted employees, which then turned into people more adversarial to the company. I think in general, you'd see a neglect of people risk in this case. Of course, you'd also saw on the technical level that EOAs had very high power in the system, so there was no multi-factor authentication or authorization for privileged actions or high-risk actions. There were no checks and balances on many of these places where they could have happened. Yes, so this another key compromise, but of a different nature. A common thing on insider threats is recovery of funds, right? People put on pressure on these people very effectively, and usually the money gets returned. We will see other cases. Any inputs from you guys on this one? I'm also interested in how some of you manage the people risk in your organizations or in organizations you know, where you would say, look, there was this wild, wide west of Web3, what we kind of moved on. By now, we do things differently, what works, what doesn't work. I know we take this very serious, ChainSecurity ourselves. Polygon takes it serious. I don't know how you do it. Would be very interested in this. Yeah, how to manage this people risk.
Having like an onboarding and offboarding policy, and having access to the full list to ensure that less access and also access for a limited amount of time for whatever the access is required, but kind of don't give permanent access to security sensitive things.
Yeah, makes sense. And those are like the basic and obvious one everyone should be doing. Unfortunately, people don't do it, but they should. I'll make this conversation hot and more interesting by throwing a curveball. In our space, we respect privacy a lot, and we want anon contributors. So how do you manage anon contributors and people risk? That's the biggest question. How do you tell this anon is not DPRK? Anyone has any thoughts on that? I can share the policy we have at Polygon because we are anon friendly but still safe. I want to know if anyone else has cracked the code or is working on it. I mean, DPRK can own all the anons. I said, like, they have more people than all of the blockchain developers combined. So that strategy could work for first 3 months, but then they will pick up and yeah.
We had one more in the back.
Yeah, how about just changing addresses? So authorization to the smart contracts will rotate to another authorization address, or in exchanges, just move the money to another address after key people leave.
Yeah, so having good offboarding policies, right? Eric already mentioned this. This is very important. Like when someone leaves, can you really clean it? And you need to know, you need to keep track of every permission you give during the lifetime. This is hard, honestly. And then you need to have efficient processes in place to quickly withdraw them too. But it's very worthwhile. You need to do it anyway, right?
Yeah, for sure. And the reality is, like in practice, from what I've seen, most of the insider threats have originated from people who are currently employed by the org, not the ex-people.
Do you do background checks on employees?
Yes. So I can give some info about like what we do as Polygon in the anon-friendly way. So it's not 100% anonymous, but we have two basic levels of security there. One, for everyone, basically, we use a third-party background company to do background checks. So they would have all the actual details and everything about the person, which they would delete in whatever their retention policy is. I don't remember the exact number of days, but they would get all the details. They would verify. They will do police background checks and everything. But they would not share any of that with us. So we will not know. We will just get to know, okay, this person cleared it, or this person has this issue. So that is one thing. The other is for hiring anon people. We do have a few anon people in Polygon. we require at least one proof of recommendation, sort of. So you must be recommended by at least one person in our org who trusts you and knows you for a long time. So it basically, like, it's we trust our org to know what's best or which anon is good or not. You should not be recommending anyone who you are not comfortable with. It's sort of like we are trusting our employees to be good. It's the philosophy of private trackers. If I don't know how many of you do torrents and all, but it's basically the invite tree. If you know someone good, you invite them. If the person who you invited does bad, you also get kicked out. So you only share these invites very carefully, and only when you really trust this person. And this process has worked wonderfully for us. We have not had a single case where an internal employee has recommended an bad anon. Like, it has always been very highly trusted, good anons. Yes, knock to the wood.
Okay, so this is for insiders. There is so much more, of course, which can be done here, but I'll keep it more technical because I'm just more familiar with the technical stuff. Please also add stuff to your document. Do we have, okay, one really last one on this?
There was one more on top of what you just said. If you wanted to include more anon people, is the use of session keys or access controlled roles, where if you want them to do something very specific, give them access to some address, some function selector, and some other conditions to the call data and the payload, and then they can execute the stuff. It can be time-gated as well, or not, or can be removed with refresh, and something that's been actively worked actually a lot. But
for this one-time access, it works, right? But this is mostly about the people you trust for years or so.
Yeah, but you can still implement that for those people as well.
Yeah, makes sense. This also just comes down to layer of security. I would do this not just for anons. Why? I do it for everyone. Like, it's just a additional layer of security, which we should do for everyone. But then you have to, again, balance like practicality versus policy situation. But yes, it's a good layer of security to add. Yes.
Okay. I'll go on. This is a case I don't want to talk about too much. It's an exchange was hacked because someone got access to their Google Cloud, and they had all the private keys in there. This is, of course, bad, and we don't need to say how bad this is on how many levels. This happens if you need to segregate wallets. You need to keep funds in different wallets to be secure, right? But you don't really know what you're doing. Because, yeah, I mean, okay, I'll quickly go through it. Just so you know, many are doing a lot of things right? Not everyone, though. So in this case, like 150 million were drained over a long time by an actor who got access to those private keys, just one by one draining all these wallets, right? Then the project didn't even notice for really a long time. I guess they got noticed because someone told them, look, I can't withdraw, somehow it's not working on next Monday, right? This was a traditional Saturday morning, Friday attack, something like that. What did we learn? There's obviously no use in segregating if you lose access to all of these keys if they are stored in a central place. That's kind of equivalent to not segregating wallets. Relying on cloud infrastructure. So, first off, in this case it was Google Cloud. Generally, this is more secure than most of the things we can build in reasonable amounts of time, right? This has to be said, right? But if you are an exchange, that's your business, right? You can be a lot more secure, and there are dedicated systems to allow you to do that. Hardware wallets, and I'm not talking about Ledger here, right? Proper hardware HSMs, which manage this, stuff like that, right? There is really, this is the bread and butter of normal banks today too. Obviously, they need to sign a lot of things digitally too, right? It's not only us. So, yeah, there's a lot you can do. This is really not how you should approach it.
Yeah, I'll add quick, like, siding tangential attack vector here because it just reminded me, which I've seen increase now a lot, is people trusting AI tools blindly when all of the AI tools are just farming all of your data for training. So there are two attack vectors here. One, if you use the public version of it, for example, even if you buy the ChatGPT Plus for $20, whatever you enter in there is going to be used to train their model. So for whatever reason, if you pass all of your if you enter any secret, obviously it's gone. But what people end up doing is, I've seen like they would upload they will upload their whole code base and then ask for suggestions or something. So ChatGPT is good at explaining code or doing things like that. So, but the problem is if your code base had secrets, any environment files or whatever, now ChatGPT knows this and it's actually gonna add that to its model. And in future, maybe someone would type, give me example of GitHub private key, and boom, your private key is shown to them. So this is one attack vector. The second one is, even if you buy an enterprise version of the software where they claim private data and no training on your data and whatnot, the thing is, they still log all of your data, and their support and engineers are able to look at this data for training for their own like improvement purposes and so on. So if you read their TNC, you would see there like so if you enter any secret there, any of the OpenAI employee support engineer can still see it and drain you. I've seen this happen a lot with things like Google Photos. Like people would take a photo of their mnemonic and upload it on Google Photos. Usually it's very safe, but in edge cases, they still have access to it. So not great. And GitHub Copilot, like how many of us added to our repo where we have like our private secrets in environment variables and everything. Just look at their privacy policy one, because I'm actually not sure about the privacy policy of GitHub Copilot, but it's definitely a risk vector people should explore.
So can you recommend something? Let's suppose in our system, like we are a bridge and we have a private key that signs our transaction. I mean like 20 transactions per second. So how should we secure that single private key? Like where should we store, what best practices should we have? I mean like we can't have a air gap device who is just signed 20 transactions.
This is a hotkey, just like someone which needs to
hardware.
sign like automatically a lot, right? So which technology should you use to enable that?
To secure that private key, like
yeah,
the securest way or like the best practices, I would say.
Yeah, for any hot key, there are two things you need to secure. One is the actual key itself. You can throw it in any HSM or something and it's good enough for a hotkey purposes. It shouldn't have billions of dollars on it. But the bigger attack vector and how most of the attacks happen to hotkeys is the authentication mechanism. If your HSM just has a public API and it has /post data and it returns the signature, it's worthless. So it's like that is the actual mechanism you need to secure, that only the right people should be able to request a signature from there. Only the right things should be able to request the signature from there. You need to secure it through firewalls, through filters, through everything. But that's the harder component you need to focus on.
Yeah, thanks.
Do you want to add something?
But what if like the dedicated HSM, if you have like a GCP admin and you control the HSM, if you compromise the GCP admin, like what can you do with dedicated HSMs?
Yeah, that's the thing. Like that's the access part. Once the key is in HSM, it's secure. Like, but if you can access the HSM somehow, and being an admin is just one of those things, it is dangerous. In GCP, actually, you can have no admins in AWS as well. Nobody has that permission, and only select products have select permissions. You could have a system where nobody has read permission to the HSM, only signing requests and so on. But again, then you need to ensure people are not signing the wrong things and so on. So it's permissioning thing, but obviously you need to ensure the people that are in there are trusted and...
so you're proposing having like a segregated, like also HSM infrastructure that...
Oh yeah, like in your, that's again traditional Web 2 stuff, like in your infrastructure, it's not just HSMs. Like everything should be segregated, and it should be the least privilege of I'm forgetting what the principle is called, but everyone should only have access to things they need, nothing extra. It shouldn't be like, okay, I'm the CEO, I have admin access. No, like it's actually the opposite in Polygon. Like I lead security and I have less access than almost everyone under me. The simple reason is like I'm the bigger target, and I don't do the day-to-day activity that I need this access every day. Like maybe I'll need it once a week. I'll create a ticket. I'll get access for 15 minutes. I'll do my thing. I'll create a ticket, remove my access. So it's just, yeah, like access management is one of the biggest things to like do. It's the hardest thing to do right, and it's something nobody does in our space, but needs to be done.
But this is a good question. Like, is there someone here to say, like, I want to shill an HSM, right? Basically a solution I am actually using and feeling very comfortable with.
You can actually use TEs for this. You will answer, but just my thought. Like,
ideally, something you can actually use.
Yeah, look, I think you could use KMS or Cloud HSMs, and you can restrict policies, do just-in-time.
Do you know a good one?
Yeah. KMS is fine for holding for holding keys. I think the admin permission is the problem, right? You just-in-time, just-in-time permissions using something like Lumos or other approval systems. But to tell you the truth, maybe just use Fireblocks. I don't work for Fireblocks, but that's a much better solution where it notifies multiple signers. You can build quorums, so that's probably a better solution here.
Okay. Okay, one more in the back. And yeah, we'll come to smart contract tags too.
So in terms of HSM capabilities, you have the cloud solutions, which is obviously AWS's cloud HSM solution. I think is slightly better than GCP's at the moment. Sorry, but I'm a hybrid cloud user, so I don't judge either way. I just find the best solution. AWS's cloud HSM solution is a bit more segmented and can allow for sort of a bit more user granularity, whereas GCP, and that's within the HSM construct itself, not just IAM principles. GCP's HSM is built into their cloud KMS system, and therefore you're a little bit more dependent on just sort of the standard identity access management within GCP, and I think that's your biggest risk factor on both of these HSM solutions. As the previous person mentioned, like it's really less, the HSM is fantastic, but it's going to do what you tell it to do. So unless you set up granularity within the access control mechanisms, you're still going to have a similar issue, and that's why typically a lot of people do move to Fireblocks, because they've created that sort of multi-factor capability and authorization patterns. Again, AWS, you can do it a little bit easier because you can dial into the HSM console and programmatically set up some of these kind of multi-factor capabilities. Otherwise, on-prem, Talos is a really good HSM solution. If you have unlimited money, if you've minted unlimited money, then you can go for IBM Z series if you really want to be fancy. But really, the best thing to do is really making sure that your access controls prevent your HSM from just blindly signing anything that comes through to it, especially if you're leveraging web application services that are specifically signing on your behalf.
Yeah, I think this is a good thing to repeat. You need to think a step further from my perspective. If you think the HSM is just holding your key securely, that's not enough. It is really, you need to think of your HSM, the system which validates if that transaction should happen, right? And then, yeah, some good suggestions were mentioned. Okay, let's go on. This is one message I just want to highlight, right? We will, and we are smart contract auditors, right, and so on, and we really try to secure the space from this perspective. But key compromises are the new big thing. There was a very good talk by Peter at DSS. You can see the recording highlighting this. Phishing, a type of key compromise, right, and this. These are the big hacks of today. So, the big smart contract hacks. The biggest one, it's long time ago, but Devcon was longer. This is why it's in here. We talked about this one a lot, and you might be familiar with it, right? There were great videos made on this. And I was planning to show the video here, the short part which explains the hack. It takes like 3-4 minutes. Do you want that? Okay. First, some advertising. Okay, let me see. Okay, I don't know. The sound, can you help me with the sound? You cannot. Okay. Subtitles. Yes. Let's see. I will try something crazy, but...
It starts by borrowing 30 million DAI through a flash loan from Aave. A flash loan is a special type of loan anyone can take as long as they repay the money in the same transaction. Now that we have $30 million, let's deposit it into Euler. Then, let's borrow 390 million. Same token. The hack drained 6 different tokens, but they all work in the same way. Let's look at the first. It starts by borrowing 30 million DAI through a flash loan from Aave. A flash loan is a special type of loan anyone can take as long as they repay the money in the same transaction. Now that we have $30 million, let's deposit it into Euler. Then, let's borrow 390 million and deposit it right back. Usually, DAI has a collateral and borrow factor that leads to a maximum 75% loan to value. However, Euler has a special mechanism for self-collateralized loans. When your assets and debt are the same token, it bumps up your max loan to value to 95%. Dividing our borrows by our collateral, we get a loan to value of 93% and a health factor of 1.02. So everything is still perfectly legal on Euler, we just have a highly self-leveraged DAI position. Now here is where the vulnerability comes into play. Euler has a donate function that allows users to donate their collateral to the protocol itself. It was implemented because sometimes, if you have a very small balance, it can be cheaper to donate the dust than withdraw it yourself. However, this function lacks a critical security check. It doesn't require the user's health factor to be above 1 afterward. And this is the bug. It allows a user to donate into insolvency. Back to our leverage position, we now abuse this by donating 100 million. Now our health factor is 0.77. This lets us take another account and liquidate the violator, earning the maximum 20% penalty. Our deposits times 20% gives us a premium of $64 million. Finally, we repay the 30 million flash loan to net a profit of 34 million. However, Euler doesn't have that much money in its reserve, so we walk away with $8.9 million. The hacker repeated this 5 more times to drain a total of $200 million. News of Euler's hack spread like wildfire, with 200 million gone.
Okay. Okay, so I think there are more in-depth explanations, more walkthroughs. There's a lot to learn from this one. But there is, again, there is a part which is technical and very interesting, and there is a part which is very human, right? And Michael did an amazing write-up here, the War and Peace write-up at the end of this year. I heavily recommend it for everyone to read. It is a small book in itself, takes some time, so I will not go over this here. What's important? So this hack started with a small change to the code, which the small change was also audited. The small change was actually to protect against another vulnerability, which was missed in the previous audits, right? But which was in itself much less impactful than the later hack would be. And it was a small change, right? So you audit a small change, and if you audit a small change, it is hard to say, this will take me 3 weeks, while it's 10 lines of code, right? The problem obviously is that small changes are very hard to audit, and then we see this again and again. Also, you don't want to re-audit a protocol which has been heavily audited too. As an auditor, you don't like that, right? Because you really like to find bugs. So the lucky thing of this story in the end, the funds were returned, right? They lost 200 millions, they got 240 millions. This is because there's a time delay and also an insurance payout. So what did we learn here? I already said it, it's really hard to audit diffs. But also security, which Euler took very serious and took to the extremes in the version a lot of you might have seen when you took part in the crowd competition or as auditors and so on, really pays off on these levels, right? Because of the levels of security, of the things they had in place, they were able, in the end, to recover those funds. And I think it is a good case of what kind of methods you can put up to recover funds from the human side, right? Their communication was really good. And this is a super, super stressful scenario. If you read the War and Peace, you will see like there were situations where it was like blood tests and passing out on the Euler team side of things. But if you have some guidance, some plan, and it will not survive, like famously said, right? It will not survive the incident, but it will help you so much to make the playing field a little bit different. If you are well prepared, then you will still get hit by the unknown. But just because you're well prepared, you can really go ahead and kind of win in the end. Because the attacker might not be so well prepared. And in this case, this was a case, right? It was a single person who later went to prison, who was found. And yeah, so in the end, this was one of the few success stories. Few smart contract hacks are like that. Almost no key compromises are like that. I'd say key compromises, our main adversary today is Lazarus Group.
Yeah, that's true, because I'll jump in here as well, because like reality is, it is very hard to stay anonymous when first it's hard just when doing the hack, but it's even harder when you're laundering the fund. So you have done the hack, it's fine, then what do you do with it? Like you would naturally start laundering, and that's when people get caught. So most of the hackers actually get caught at one stage or another. DPRK also get caught, but they don't care. So that's why they are a bigger threat to us. Like you can't go arrest them in North Korea. With this case in particular, couple of more things I want to highlight is upgradability. That's a double-edged sword. Like I've worked a lot on smart contract upgradability and made the primitives to make it happen in 2018-19, and that is also why I know why it's a double-edged sword. It is. I'm seeing right now people upgrading contracts like there's no tomorrow. They add a new feature, they upgraded, like any small feature. And in this case, yes, they were fixing a bug as well, but they might have just upgraded to add a donate function. You can donate to protocol now, $10. We'll have $10 more revenue. Let's upgrade the contracts. So you have to be very careful about upgrading contracts, that you don't do it just for small features. Either like it should be security fixes or very large features that you can't afford to launch in a new contract. So upgradability needs to be taken seriously. And this has happened with more bigger protocols, not just Euler. Another big one comes to mind is Compound Finance. I don't remember if it happened before last Devcon or after, but that was a more hilarious case because they upgraded something, people noticed the bug, and they ended up minting like $250 million worth of comp or something extra in rewards than they should have. And as soon as the upgrade happened and they started minting more, people noticed, oh, something is wrong. At that point, it was maybe like 5 million more had been minted. But guess what? Like the to upgrade it again, they had a time lock of 7 days. So the fix took 7 more days, and by that time, they lost 250, 260 million.
Actually, on this, we have experts here in the room on the compound. Like, I'd be very interested in the learnings Compound took after that, if those are fine to share. There was a good talk at DSS on this by Michael. There's so many Michaels in this space. But yeah, if someone wants to add something to those learnings, that would be great. Michael, you need to look up from your phone. Yes. From the compound case, were there learnings? Okay, never mind. Yeah, but watch the talk, it was good.
Yeah, for sure. The basic learnings are be careful with upgradability. It's a double-edged sword.
Okay, shall we go to the next? We don't have that many minutes left, to be honest. Want to skip? It's another key compromise. With insider involvement, potentially, who knows? Little info, little to be talked about here. Another one, little info, key compromise, hot wallet, drained. But here we are back to a smart contract. Actually one which is a Polygon, using Polygon. In this case, it's an oracle manipulation. And those used to be the big hacks of last year, not of this year anymore, because we really learned. In this case, how did it work? So you might know, in general, oracle attacks, they always work by having a lending platform and manipulating the prices this lending platform depends on to first deposit and then either get it back cheap or like to drain the lending platform by pretending your assets are really, really worth a lot of money, right? So this is also what happened here. The interesting part is always, how was the oracle manipulated? In this case, surprisingly simple. Teller is an oracle where it's less permissioned than like Chainlink, for example. And the way you can, the way they secure it is you deposit TRB, then you can post prices, and people should go in and say, no, this price is not correct, and they slash your deposit, right? So this naturally takes time. A bug we see in many oracle attacks is you want to have the latest time. You don't want to wait, right? So in this case also, BonkDAO, they used that. They used the latest price, which the attacker, just by staking 10 TRB, could basically arbitrarily set. And at this point, the attack is easy, right? At this point, it simply means lower the price, deposit a little for a lot of the other value, in this case, B euro, and then increase the price and withdraw, and off you go, right? So this is what happened here. What did we learn here? And this is really an important part. If you build on stuff which is critical to your protocol, you need to understand it really well. And this is especially hard if you change a little, right? You go out, you have an idea how to improve something, you change it a little, but you don't understand. Even if you read the code and try really careful to do that. But even if you develop it from scratch and you depend on libraries, on services outside of what you developed, you depend on them. And honestly, as auditors ourselves, right, it's so hard because we, as an ecosystem, some are very good at documentation, some aren't. And in the end, you need to read code of that large system you are integrating with to really understand what it's doing, because the documentation doesn't give that away. I was just yesterday talking to one of the main devs of the Open Zeppelin libraries, or the main dev, and an idea, hopefully it happens, is do an underhanded contest for those libraries we all depend on, right? We have an underhanded Solidity contest. It was so-so this year. It was hard to find something, apparently. But it's probably easier to find underhanded stuff in libraries or these kind of systems. So it's really important. I'd say one of the main learnings, you need to understand your stack to a degree which feels paranoid at times. Yeah, of course, in this case also there were some neglects on re-auditing the changes later and so on. So this is also a recurring theme. Yeah, other learnings, like what would make this easier? Use multiple oracles and we'll have a hack where that really fails. We can put hard caps in. Sometimes this works, sometimes not. Try to do holistic audits. This really helps. But it's really expensive, so I mean I get it when it's hard, but of course in this system there was really a lot at stake. Yeah, and on oracles, yeah, it's very hard. You really, like, I applaud those. It's a centralized, often a centralized piece of infrastructure, and trying not to have that is very important, but you need to understand the security caveats of those. And also oracles, they should really try very hard to push the knowledge about their security caveats down to users. And this is going beyond, like I can say like just use Chainlink, right? But that's not, also that means, yeah, you trust a multisig now, right? So you need to know what you're into here. Yes.
There is a security flaw in the ERC20 standard that was classified as a lack of transaction handling in 2017. In 2023, the creator of ERC20 standard confirmed that this is a security issue. In 2023, there were $60 million lost because of this problem. On 1st November 2024, there were $90 million lost. 2 or 3 days ago, another user lost $25 million to this issue, which remained unpatched since 2017. What do you think of a situation where a security issue that was discovered 7 years ago caused $55 million of financial damage to Ethereum users during this year? And did ChainSecurity report the security issue in any of ERC20 contracts that you audited so far?
The last part you need to repeat. What was the last sentence?
Did you report this issue if you audited any of the ERC20 contracts?
Is this about approvals? So what's the issue with I mean, there are known caveats with ERC20s?
You mean that we don't verify zero address transfers?
Which attack exactly?
This is not the attack, this is the violation of security principle of fail-safe defaults. When a user is trying to deposit tokens to addresses, there is no way to verify if this is a correct invocation or not. And when a user is trying to deposit funds to a smart contract, this is 100% possible to verify if this is a correct transaction or it must not happen. For example, if you are trying to deposit NFT to a smart contract which is not designed to receive NFTs, it will not be deposited. If you are trying to deposit Ether or ERC223 token to a contract which is not designed to handle these deposits, it will be automatically rejected. And with ERC20, it doesn't happen. As a result, users lost $115 million.
Yeah, so I'll answer that. First of all, like it's not an issue in the standard itself. Standards are meant to be generic. If you use Web2, in fact, Swift, for example, you can use Swift to transfer money to anyone who doesn't even know how to handle it or what to do with it, to a bank which is malicious, to a bank which is under-collateralized. It's just a way to transfer money. Although I do agree that there should be protection for users to not transfer to things to places which can't handle it, but it needs to happen at the wallet level, not at the standard level.
So the general thing is here, how hard as developers, as security people, should we make it, or how hard should we try to prevent user errors, right? Well, we can always say, like, these are cases where you say a careful user will not have a problem, but the standard allows a user to make errors. Clearly, the code is much simpler by allowing those. It's harder to think of all the caveats. To this, I'd say it is valid, it is important to explain that people who use it know how this is done. It's not a fault of a standard to allow this. It's a fault of a standard plus the community to not educate about this problem, right?
Excuse me, are you trying to say that error handling is optional and in some cases it is unnecessary to handle software errors even if it causes the loss of money for your users? Are you saying that what the creator of ERC20 standard is calling a security issue is in fact not a security issue? And are you trying to say that if wallets fail to solve it for 7 years, they will magically solve it in the next years? What do you expect?
Now again, you're confusing. I'm not denying it's a security issue. I'm saying it's not the standard where it should be fixed. Any standards by definition should be very generic to support any use case. Even if you look at as a traditional finance, you can send money to anyone. It doesn't matter. Using SWIFT, using different countries have different standards. ERC20 is a very generic standard, and it's not even just for money where you have loss. ERC20 token could be any representation of anything. It doesn't need to have any value. People could use it. You could build functionality where you intentionally send tokens to places where they are not supported to increase visibility of that token. It just goes there, it stays there, for example. So there are many use cases of ERC20 standard. This is a security issue that needs to be fixed, not at the standard level, at the wallet level or any place where the user interacts with it. And I agree with you, like the wallets have not 100% fixed it yet, but a lot of wallets now have added protection. I think MetaMask has it, Rabi has it, and so on. If you try sending money to like self-address or zero address, it will give you a warning before moving ahead. So it's not that we have not done anything, but yes, our industry, as we discussed at start, it's not mature enough. We have not had the 50 years of progress that the Web2 has had to iron out these issues. It is an issue. People are working on it. We'll get there.
Okay, I'm skipping a few more things here. Atomic Wallet. It is a very interesting hack, to be honest. And I think some people know a lot more about this hack than I do. Some stuff happened in here, but somehow, like a lot of people got drained. They got drained at the same time using Atomic Wallet, but it's unknown how. This simply is another private key compromise. Yeah, so quick, how much more time do I have? 2 minutes. the classic.
Maybe we can open the document real quick, see if there's anything.
Yeah, so no, then when we will share the presentation afterwards, it has like, of course, more things in there, a lot more hacks. Yes, so we'll use it for final other questions. Because yeah, I will not explain a hack in a minute.
Okay, then any final questions, any other questions, comments, anything?
Someone? So, of course, feel free to, is there one? Ah, very good.
Yeah, with air-gapped machines, how do you manage software updates?
With what machines?
Let's say you have an air-gapped signing machine. How do you handle updates?
Yeah, for sure. So there can be different levels of air gapping. If you are just purely using it for signing, you don't necessarily need to ever upgrade it. Like, it's just there, it works. If it's working, it's not broken, you don't need to fix it. Like even, in fact, ATMs, for example, were running Windows XP for 10 years after its security timeline. So if it's air gapped, the security vulnerabilities are not really applicable to it. But you can also just whitelist certain repositories where you get updates from, and just in the firewall and get updates from there. You don't necessarily need to disconnect the machine completely from the internet, and it would be very hard to actually do signing when it's completely disconnected. You can technically, but it would more be an HSM than an air-gapped machine. So it's just use of firewall. Good connections, whitelist based are okay. Everything else blocked by default.
I also made good experience with live CD style systems. So where yeah, you kind of just have it for that transaction, and afterwards you get rid of the system again just by unplugging, shutting it down, right? And then this works quite nice to not have continuous exposure. Okay, thanks everyone.
Thanks for
And you can, if you have more things to, if you want to ask more stuff about other hacks, we can't be here in the front because there's the next workshop, a very interesting one by the Red Guild. I can recommend it on how not to get phished. But you can catch us outside too, of course.
Thanks, folks.